Welcome to Speaking Frankly. Well, here we are. The fall has come, but along with the fall, of course, is the rain, but also beautiful trees and beautiful landscape. One of the things that we're very fortunate in living here in Oregon is we do have 4 seasons, at least here in this Yamhill County. But along with having 4 seasons, we also have reason to know one of the things that's taking place in seasons, and that is the whole public sector and public television and public democracy and what's important for it. So I have as my special guest today, Kathleen Blair. Kathleen.
Hi, Frank. Thank you.
Welcome to Speaking Frankly.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's very kind of you.
So delighted that you're active with the Yamhill County Democrats.
I'm a precinct committee woman, and I've enjoyed it, a great deal. When we came to Oregon, I was actually registered as an independent, but because Oregon doesn't have open primaries, I had to choose. And I come from a long line of old-fashioned Southern Yellow Dog Democrats, so I thought maybe it was time to come home to the family fold.
Welcome back. Okay, that's
the prodigal
great.
daughter.
That's wonderful. Well, I know that another thing, along with your having a background with the Democrats, that you have a background yourself with the military.
I'm a veteran.
You're a veteran.
And my mother was as well. And I come from a long line of, patriots who served this country before we were a country even.
Yes.
So I was an officer in the Air Force on 4 years of active duty. Before that, I was an enlisted Marine. And my mother was a commissioned officer in the United States Marine Corps during World War II.
Your mother was in World War II.
She was. Her brothers signed up right after Pearl Harbor, and she went and got a job in a munitions factory in Kansas City, Kansas. Her degree was in English literature.
Wow.
Her specialty, I think, was Beowulf and Chaucer, and that was what women could do. They were looking for Rosie the Riveters. And one day she saw a flyer, and it said, we're looking for women to join the Marine Corps Officer Corps. And she joined up, and of course her folks gave her a horrible time about it. This was a small little town in Missouri,
yes,
and it was a very insular community, and women who joined the service in those days were considered to be either loose or lesbians or both.
Okay.
And mom just said, look, it's my war too. Why should it be just my brother's war? It's my war too.
That's beautiful.
And so she was in the second graduating class out of Hunter College, took her commission, and she was couriering classified documents during the war.
Well, you have a fabulous background.
Well, thanks.
That is really wonderful.
I tell you what, Mom was an especially interesting role model because she did things that women didn't do before the time that we had the women's movement to support us and that sort of thing. Mom had to duke it out herself. She joined the Marine Corps, and there was all kinds of harassment. There was a commanding officer who would walk up to her in the morning and pluck at the buttons on her uniform jacket right here and say, I think that button's loose. Maybe you better get it replaced. She finally decked him and stood captain's mast for it, but she wasn't going to stand for it.
Good for her.
After the war, she went to work for my father's engineering company, and they had the contract with UNRWA-CINRA, which was the United Nations Recovery Mission to China after the war.
I see.
And he hired her because she had a top secret clearance.
Oh.
And all of them had to have clearances to go over there. So
Yes.
they were in China. She was there when China was falling.
Yes.
She came home. She was executive personnel director at Harsfeld's and at Peck's, which were upscale retail stores in Kansas City, when women just weren't executives. They just weren't. You couldn't get through that ceiling. But she did.
Yes.
And then she was the district representative for Avon for the 13 southern Missouri counties.
Really?
And now Avon, of course, is now known for helping
Yes.
women build their businesses. They were before Mary Kay. They were before anyone. But she always held executive positions. And so I grew up in a household where it was sort of unspoken, just because you're a girl doesn't mean you can't do anything you want to do.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. And so I didn't experience the feeling that, when I go out in the world, I'm going to have to worry about sexism and discrimination, because I never had it at home.
Yes.
And it took me until I was past 40 to realize it really is real. And I'm sure it happened to me. I just didn't think It
didn't-
worked that way.
Right.
You know, in the service, women are paid the same as men.
Yes.
Because it's based on your pay grade. So I didn't really get that in the civilian world, women are still making 77 cents to every dollar that men make.
No.
I don't
not
get
right.
it. I really don't get it.
It's not right. No, as a matter of fact, I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the end of it's right at the beginning of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And my mother ran a rooming house.
Right.
And she was in charge. And she came to own her own rooming house. Initially rented it, and I grew up over 4 different rooming houses. Finally, in the 4th rooming house, she owned it, you see. So here was a strong, independent woman right there before World War II, see. And I think that part of my own sense of independence is I got from my mother
Sure.
as a woman.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you see?
Exactly. Well, it's always been the case that if you weren't married or there wasn't someone to take care of you, you had to make your own way in the world. My mother was big into genealogy, and it turns out I'm related to Carrie Nation. I left the hatchet at home today, but Carrie
Okay,
Nation,
thank you.
Carrie Nation was busting up saloons and extorting money from these saloon owners
Yes,
on her own
yes.
because she was seeing all of these women and children left destitute because the men would go out to the saloon and drink all their paychecks away.
Right.
So she just finally said, look, guys, you're going to put shoes on these children's feet and you're going to feed them because you're responsible for these guys being in here.
Right. Good for her.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe it just runs in the family.
Well, that's beautiful. Keep those genes. They're
I'll hang on to them.
Now, tell me, you were in the service,
I was.
and now you were in, what, 4 years, was it? Or
I was 4 years active duty as a commissioned officer, and I was a forecast meteorologist for the
I
Air
see.
Force.
Oh,
Before that, I'd been an enlisted Marine, and I was a pay clerk.
okay.
And I had enlisted in the Marine Reserves because I would have a guaranteed slot for officer candidate school when I finally graduated college. My degree was in math and chemistry.
Oh.
And so I wanted to use my degrees.
Yes.
See, my career plan was I'd get to be a fighter pilot instructor, then I'd go to NASA and fly the shuttle, then I'd lead the first manned mission to Mars, then I'd retire and be president.
Okay.
Well, none of it worked out that way, and I very quickly learned the Marine Corps is a man's service, and I was happy for it to be so, but I wanted to do something. I wanted to fly.
Yes.
So the regulations said, because I was on reserve status, if another service offered me a commission, the Marine Corps had to release me.
I see.
So I went down to the AFE station, took the test, missed Navy flight school by 1 point. They said they'd never seen a score that high from a woman, but I still missed it by 1 point. So the Air Force said, we'll make you a meteorologist, at least you can be on the flight line. I said, I'll take it.
Okay.
So that's when I made the move and took my commission with them.
Well, I took flying lessons at age 16
Oh, man.
when I was working in
Really?
a defense factory at night, made enough money, gave most of it to my mother who ran a rooming house, you see, but went out on Saturdays and took lessons in a little Piper Cub and got ready to solo. And then, however, because I was so young, I had to have my mother's consent and waiver. And I took this home, and she wouldn't sign it.
Oh, Mom.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, she had not lost her oldest son, who became a stunt pilot, a balloon jumper, all kinds of
no.
things, you see, a motorcycle racer. And she hadn't lost him, she didn't want to lose me.
Well,
So
she may not have had the adrenaline left to chew her nails.
Yeah, well, that could be, see. But I took those lessons, got ready to solo, but the war was on now.
Yeah.
And so then I finally enlisted in the Navy Air Corps, and they sent me to school the first 2 years as part of the training. I did then solo for the Navy on a little Piper Cub. Then they sent us to Corpus Christi, Texas.
Yeah.
And there went through the first, I was up to stage 3 with an SNJ. That's why I like to take people out to the museum, the Air Museum here.
Oh, isn't
in
that
McMinnville.
wonderful?
It is.
That's
and I
a
can
great
show
resource.
them the 3 planes that I learned to fly on, you see. However, I flunked out on the 3rd one, the SNJ.
Oh, no.
And at that point,